In Unity, we talk a lot about the self, do we not? In fact, some people might call it Unity's dark side, that we talk so much about personal transformation, but there's a reason for that, right? No one else can do our work but ourselves, no? So Unity was something unique at the time of its inception. At the time of its inception, it was a revelation that, in fact, I, in and of myself, could transform my consciousness, therefore transform my life. Even the very cells of my body could be transformed by the power of my thinking. And this is something that, right, was not so widely taught at that time. That, in fact, there was a different teaching, and that teaching was that if you pray to something outside of you, if you put your money in a building called a church, if you give it to someone of a higher authority, if you do X, Y, and Z, all of these external things, then maybe you'll be transformed, maybe you will be forgiven, maybe you will get a gift, maybe something will happen to you, but not through you. So in Unity, there was a new idea, an idea that was birthed that was incredibly empowering, that said all of that stuff that can happen to you, sure, it can happen to you, but guess what? There is something you were born with that can never be taken away, that was embedded in you from the beginning of you in the mind of God consciousness, and that is that you have access to all things within you. And it's not something that you have to earn. It's not something that can be taken away. It's not something that's given in proportion to the other things and the appearance of things. It's not something like your level of intelligence or your level of this or that that can be judged and changed with the time. Not about your level of attraction, which, depending on which century you're born into, is either high or low or flitting in or flitting out, right? It's not attached to any of those things. In fact, it is exactly the same in all beings. It is called the Christed consciousness, which has been called by many names throughout time. It has been addressed by saints and sages and master teachers throughout the era, but it hasn't always been so popular in church, has it? Because this idea that within us, within you, within me, within all beings, we have complete and absolute access to the kingdom, the queendom, whatever you want to call it, the enlightened, awakened state of consciousness, that idea doesn't always build systems. It doesn't always build churches. Jesus, the master teacher, did not come to planet Earth and preach about building a church, did he? Gandhi didn't talk about building a church. Other spiritual leaders didn't talk about building churches that were really leaders of consciousness. Because in fact, building structures, forms, and organizations can be limited, right? From the moment that we get the idea that somehow this thing is sourcing something, then the ego or the separation mind can pop up with these ideas, well, then I need to keep it afloat because it's keeping me afloat. If this is sourcing me, then even if it's not benefiting, even if it's this or that, or it's this or that, even when, I still need it because it's the source of my livelihood. True or false? True to the human mind. True to the illusion that we are sourced by outer conditions, but absolutely 100% false in consciousness. Because there is one source, it is God's source, it is the fabric that is sourcing our lives in all ways, physical, spiritual, emotional, in every way possible. There is one source that is sourcing us. So this idea in Unity that was born that said, all of these other things can be great if they are tuned in with that source, if they are serving back to the spirit of that source among us, then that's valued and valuable. But the work starts right here. The work starts right here. And this is the one thing, this heart connection, the scripture that is written upon your heart, is the one thing to be true to, beyond all other structures, systems, or minds. Amen? So now that work that starts with me, that starts right here, that was incredibly instrumental at the time when unity began, at the turn of the century, was not meant to say that this collective work was not useful. It was not meant to say that we're not here to do work together, right? Because in fact, we are at the birthplace of a new era. We are at the birthplace of doing work together in consciousness from a spiritually sound, spiritually focused, spiritually centered place of empowerment together. Because there is something that happens when we have a consciousness that I am connected to you, that you are connected to me, that in fact when we gather together in this place, there is an energy and a field of consciousness that does not exist when each unique and expressly different individual is not here. Do you believe that one person could be out of this room and the vibrational frequency of this room and in this live streaming experience would shift? That's what happens when we know who we are. And when we know whose we are. We recognize that by the very right of consciousness, I am sitting in my seat, and this is not just a body, this is not just flesh that is in this seat. This is a consciousness, and within this field of consciousness comes, whatever you want to call it, all of the energies of light that surround this consciousness that I call me. Do you believe that you have a soul that is beyond this moment, beyond this physical body? Do you believe that you have a self that is not visible to the eyes? Do you believe that you have energies of light? Call it angels, call it thoughts, call it whatever you want. Call it the ancestors of your being. But do you believe that you have that surrounding you, that goes with you, that supports you? Do you believe that you have spiritual light that shows you things, that lifts up a hand, that offers you things where your human eye could not see it, but in fact there was an eye of an angel or whatever you want to call it that showed you something that was before that moment invisible to you? Do you believe that that's something that's real? Are we going to wait for science? Are we going to wait for science to show us that we are more than this physical field of consciousness that is right here, this physical person in this body? Are we going to wait for science to give us some special little trinket that can be made and manufactured that we can put in our Christmas stockings, that you can actually shine a little light and you can see, oh, there's an aura. Oh, there's some energies of light coming from that person. Oh, there's some things going on behind the scenes. Are we going to wait until we have all of those devices? Are we going to wait till research and science shows up and matches and meets our spiritual practice? Or are we going to start and continue to be the powerful pioneers of consciousness that our movement has started us out to be? So there's an idea in our world today that church is on the decline, that attendance in a spiritual community or in a church is going down. Now, I don't know if that statistics is the same for some of the mega churches, but for most denominations, the statistics show that attendance is going down. Do you think that the need for gathering together in spiritual community is going down? I don't think so either. We have in fact entered an era where virtual connection and virtual community has become so great, that many of us are suffering from a new, probably unnamed syndrome. We could probably Google it after the service, and there probably is a name for it. It's probably in a psychology textbook now. But we are on a mass level suffering from the lack of physical community. We are suffering from the plethora of virtual community that can leave some of us isolated even in our own homes. It used to be that to have a home in a neighborhood, it was almost essential to know people in your neighborhood. You almost had to make it. But now you don't even have to leave your house to shop. And it's changing things. You don't have to leave your house to socialize. You don't have to leave your house to shop. You don't have to leave your house to do a number of things. In fact, if you wanted to, you could probably just stay home all the time, couldn't you? but there would be an illusion going on. Has anyone had a virtual connection, a virtual relationship, that then when they've actually met that relationship, they've realized it's not what you thought it was, or it's not there? There are people that have, thousands of Facebook friends, right? But don't have one person that they could call at 3 a.m. when they feel like their life is over. That's an atrocity of our era. And that will only be healed when we recognize that we are complicated beings and we have a set of spiritual needs that need to be met spiritually. And that's not to devalue this cosmic connection we have. This cosmic connection where we can go beyond into the field of the virtual, I believe is here to show us the reality of our spiritual nature. That in fact, we are all connected all the time. That in fact, you don't need to be anywhere near someone to be sending them a message. That in fact, that is your birthright. That is our spiritual nature. And in fact, in the future, there will be classes upon classes, not in woo-woo interesting places, but in universities, on how to use your real abilities. But until then, let us honor it for what it's good for. It's good for connecting us. It's good for amazing things, collecting us in consciousness. In fact, right here, we are live streaming to a community. We have our tentacles out across the United States and even beyond into Europe. We are collectively, right here in this moment, contemplating this consciousness. That's powerful. That's powerful. But we must acknowledge the fullness of our beings. There are many different kinds of connection that a human being needs. 4 that I know are primary are the connection to the environment, the connection to the animal kingdom, nature. If we undervalue that connection, I think we find ourselves spiritually depleted. Whether it's you caught the moon the other night. Feel that? Something just happened in this room. Something just happened in this room. And it wasn't nothing, but we couldn't measure it. At least we don't have a device right now. And we couldn't see it. But if we're honest with ourselves, can we feel that? That's all I had to say, and we all just felt that? That's consciousness. We need nourishment from the environment. We need to feel ourselves. And I believe part of that is the remembrance of how mystical, magical, and miraculous this life is. Because when we see nature, when we see the animal kingdom, when we see the moon, when we see the ocean, when we see the majesty of God's creation, spiritual creation, it is impossible not to have the idea that I am somehow a part of it. That somehow I am like that moon. Somehow I am that, and that is me. The next is the individual, and that's the one in unity we can sometimes get criticized for, that individual connection. But let us remember that there have been ages and eras where people don't have that connection. Where people aren't tuned into themselves, can't feel themselves, don't even know their own minds and their own beings, don't even know their inner technology. If we have not met our inner technology, if we do not know thyself, then we are sitting on our potential, our absolute spiritual potential. Another form is being nourished by and knowing our spiritual gifts. I believe that people awaken to God and awaken to God consciousness by activating their spiritual gift. That's another one in unity we're pretty good at. And if you haven't figured that out yet, just wait. If you've walked into a unity center, wherever it may be, get ready for things to unfold you didn't even know you had. Because part of this spiritual walk in unity is about uncovering and discovering spiritual gifts you never knew you had. You are sitting right next to a miracle. You are sitting right next to an ability that you didn't even know could be developed, that you didn't even know existed. There are abilities and people in this room that if we could dive into their consciousness, we would be studying them for the rest of our lives, going, whew, how did you get there? How did you hear that? How did you know this? How did you demonstrate that? One spiritual gift is enough to blow you away for a lifetime. But the fourth place of needing connection and nourishment is through community. And we are the ones who will pioneer what that community is to look like. If we use these online connections, if we use the luxuries of our century to keep us away from each other, because now I don't need to find you if I need to learn how to sew up a hole in my pants. I can just order another pair online or buy a little gadget that staples it. I don't know if there's something like that exists or not, but there is now. It's a good idea. But if I don't need you, is that not the same evolution that we have brought to relationships? Isn't an amazing relationship one where I can stand here with you and say, I want to be with you not because I need to, but because I want to? I want to marry you not because I'm lacking something within me and I want to drain it from you for the rest of my life, so that I can show up for my life, but I want to be a whole being that then is one with another whole being that creates a mountain and a valley, because that is a magnificent landscape. So is a new sense of community being pioneered right now. But if we use all of these developments, all of these luxuries of this day and age to separate ourselves and isolate ourselves from each other rather than to use them to connect, I think we are missing the mark, no? I was once in the world of online dating. I have to admit it. When I was in ministerial school, actually, I was enrolled by my family and a bottle of wine that they had in California. And they discussed how we need to put Erin onto eHarmony. So they did. And it was a funny experience. Now, I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands, but at any stage in our lives, we can find ourselves in one of these new, interesting experiences. It's not something for just people that are 20 and 30. It's something that in all ages and stages of our lives. There are people that are on Match.com that got married in like their 90s, 80s, right? I mean, it's a wild age that we live in. There are people that have, traversed continents that have connected. But here was my experience. So if any of you are hopeless romantics and connector people, and maybe a little bit delusional, you can start connecting with the idea of someone. Do you know what I'm saying? The idea of something and the idea of someone. And you can start falling in love with a piece of paper or a few keyboard strokes, right? We can feel a connection because at the core, what's the truth? At the core, all beings are beautiful. At the core, all beings are lovable. At the core, all beings are magnificent. So without even seeing someone's face, if I can tune in and I can start opening up to and hearing the heart of who they are, I am connected, no? But then you can meet the person. And then there's a whole nother level of connection that has to be there or not, right? So you could be talking and expressing your heart and connecting on a soul level entirely 100%, and then the second you get to meet someone, you meet them and you're like, hi, brother. Hello, my brother. Nice to meet you, brother. Because there are all sorts of, just like there are all sorts of ways to nourish the being, nourish the soul, there are all sorts of connections, are there not? I found out too late from a very wise girlfriend who said, Erin, you used it all wrong, because I had no luck on those things. I met some friends, but I had no luck on those community sites because I was missing something. And she gave me this bit of wisdom after. She said, "You're going about it all wrong. You're being introduced, and then you're going into connecting." Has anyone gotten the memo on email and texting versus a conversation? You don't text communications. You don't email emotions. You connect, either one-on-one or at least with a voice, right? When you have anything that could be misunderstood or misinterpreted, emails and texting are for information. But they become dangerous when we use them for connection, when we use them for deep communication. So it's the same way with this online life that we have. If we use them for connecting, we've got a gem. If we use them because if we didn't have them, I couldn't be talking with, in communion with, that congregant that's in Georgia on her couch. But if I mistake that connection, and I let it stay right there, I am missing the mark. The advice she gave me was that you need to use this first to just have the conversation. And in that conversation, you get all the main things out of the way. Anyone who's still on those sites, here you go. You get all the main things out of the way, the main compatibilities, the main information. The information that would be door openers or door closers. And then you allow yourself to open the door or close the door. The next thing she said, the next thing you do is you get out there and meet them as soon as possible. You don't continue a relationship online. You hop out there and you meet them and you develop that relationship, or you let it go. Do you see the difference? Do you see the difference? One opens the door to a whole load of connections that you may have otherwise not been able to have, so that you can have a connection and meet and see where it goes. Another one keeps you in a state of illusion and delusion, building something that you don't even know if it's there yet, right? Building a friendship that maybe doesn't have any substance, that maybe after the first 5 minutes you'd be like, you know what, I'll keep you in the ethers as my friend. That's what we're being called to do in spiritual community, is use all of the developments of technology to allow us to get off of our bums and connect with each other. Because we have access to more action and activism now than we have ever had access to before. I was just at the Santa Barbara Awaken Film Festival that Unity Village Chapel was a sponsor of. And in that collection of consciousness that was the Awaken Film Festival, we had access to the great work that was going on all around the globe. Never before in time and space have we had that kind of connection, where I could be texting or connecting directly with what's going on in the Congo. Never before have we had the capabilities and the capacity to demonstrate by right of consciousness our community and the connection that is our community and the power that is our community than we have had today. Today. So what are we going to do with it? Are we going to leave it there? Or are we going to pick it up and move mountains with it? Because no one is an island. Is there anyone that can say that the doors in their lives that opened, the connections that they made, the divine appointments were made solely by themselves in a vacuum? The second I say that I'm here in Unity because this person introduced me, or I got that job because of this, then I have to go back and look behind that to the that, to the that, to the that, to the this, right? Have you ever had someone say, oh, well, you know all these people because I introduced you to that person? Okay, so step back behind that. You knew that person because all of these people introduced you to this, to that, to this, to that. There is no such thing as an island. There is no such thing as an island. There is no such thing as anyone getting anywhere alone. We exist in a magnetic community, in a field of vibrational connection. So this church idea, this spiritual community being done, is false. In fact, we are standing on the precipice of more power than we have ever been able to stand on before. And it is up to us whether or not we will circulate it, generate it, use it, connect with it, whether or not we will co-create with it, and it is ours to co-create with it. There is a larger spiritual church being formed. We're stepping into a pool of collective consciousness. And in that collection of consciousness, amazing things are happening. It makes a difference that we sit together on Sunday. An hour in a week on this planet makes all the difference in the world. Do you feel that? So let us take action. Let us use our connections to make contact. If we have not made contact with each other, and if we have not made contact with our community, then there is a divine gift wrapped and waiting that has already been offered to each one of you, each one of us, that is sitting there waiting to be opened. Once we make contact, connect. Find a reason to have a connection. Do not make yourself an island, because it's not a real reality. You couldn't be an island even if you wanted to be. And the next is commune. Never underestimate the power of communing with like minds. Something happens, and it is magical, it is mystical in the space where we commune. And the church of the future, the church that starts right now, that is the church of today into the church of the future, is the church that communes in consciousness. And that, friends, will never diminish, it will never be defeated, and it will never dissolve. It will never dissolve, because it is a spiritual community of collective consciousness. I close with these words from Unity author Eric Butterworth. He says, one of the benefits of attending a service, and I would add to that any spiritual experience that is a collection of consciousness, a collection of positive consciousness. Do you hear that? The positive consciousness, powerful consciousness. Think of the collective consciousness that we are joining, that we are communing with. Be very mindful of the collective consciousness that we are communing with. He says one of the benefits of attending a service over simply reading spiritual things out of a book is that a response is felt in the cells and functions of the body as a healing influence. When the vibration of the body temple is synchronized with powerfully spoken words of truth and the fine vibrations of the sanctuary and the collective expectations of the congregation, there is a transforming influence. To those who can get synchronized with the positive vibrations, every service is a healing service. Namaste.